ซึ่งในวันนี้เนี่ยเราจะได้พบกับ Miss Gabrielle Costigan Managing Director COO WeXelerate จากประเทศออสเตรียอีกสักครู่หนึ่งนะคะโอเคค่ะพร้อมแล้วขอเสียงปรบมือด้วยนะคะ
Hello everybody. It's been a long day and sometimes we can talk about all the technology, but if the laptop doesn't work, well, we come back to basics. It's just been proven. So let me introduce myself again. Thank you very much for the very kind introduction. My name is Gabrielle Costigan and I am the Managing Director and the CEO of WeXelerate. My aim of today's talk is to tell you a little bit about the model that works for us in Europe, especially in Austria, which is the company that I'm currently running for on behalf of 6 shareholders who wanted to create the largest innovation hub in Central and Eastern Europe. There we go. The presentation is here, so we can move on. So basically, I would like to give you a very short glance of what WeXelerate is. What we have is we established in 2017, so we're very, very young. Nonetheless, we have a huge success story, which I will be talking to you about. We actually own 9,000 square meters in the heart of Vienna. This makes it really, really important if you're an innovation hub to be easily accessible. You heard about this in the morning, in the afternoon, about getting the whole ecosystem in there together. And WeXelerate offers a very unique ecosystem consisting of corporates, in other words, old traditional companies, but established companies, and also startups, which is the heart of our innovation hub, the investors and the mentors. And as I said before, it has become the biggest innovation hub in Central and Eastern Europe. You may want to ask, what is our focus? Because there are so many hubs across the world, ranging from Americas to Europe to Australasia. Our focus is for and foremost to support the innovation agenda, but also the innovation curve of our corporates, who are incredibly well established in Europe, a lot of them with engineering backgrounds. And they are very, very excited to work with startups, obviously, and generally in an environment that is very low risk. And I will get to that topic later. And of course, these startups can partake in a 120-day accelerator program. What also makes WeXelerate very unique is we're able to concentrate in one point, in our one location, more than 500 million euros worth of capital in the one place. And that is all part of that ecosystem that we have spoken about. Now and during the next couple of minutes of the speech. Again, the program structures aims in terms of growth for the startups. We want to make sure it's cost efficient and totally ensuring that the success of any of the new products or services that a startup brings launches successfully through deal flows. David just mentioned it. You can create all the programs around everything, but ultimately if the deal flow isn't there and the investment isn't there, it's very hard to move forward. And in order to reach these goals, we have more than 20 companies who have joined this innovation hub and committed for a period of 3 to 5 years, which is very long term in the new economy, and working together successfully for 4 months with startups on a non-risk basis. Now, the other part that brings it together is the 3 pillars that I'll be talking about. We are more than just an office space and a co-working space. We're also more than just an event location and a meeting place. And ultimately, we are the multi-corporate accelerator program. What does that mean, an office space and a work spot? It means we want to connect all the relevant stakeholders. A lot of us in our region or in our country have the connectivity in the country, but we also want to make sure we can reach out internationally. Through that, we can establish really fast tracks for collaboration across the industry and the branches. That's another identity we've noticed, that the industries usually work in those silos and we want to cross and branch across. What do we talk about when we say event location and a meeting place to be? It's exactly what's happening here right now. You meet so many people in the one spot. You've got your story down pat. You know where you want to go. So we at WeXelerate produce about 35 events a month, and that's a lot considering a month only has about 20-25 working days on various topics. And they range from workshops to hackathons, to conferences, trade shows, pitching events, corporate retreats, meetups. So in actual fact, in Central and Eastern Europe, they all know this is the place to come to for innovation. And ultimately, like I said before, the multi-corporate accelerator, This is a period for batches for the startups to participate in, and they last about 4 months. And here we invite 50 startups to join our accelerator program with the support in terms of expansion, growth, and network. Ultimately, we have a lot of these innovation hubs, but what makes us a little bit more interesting and WeXelerate is we don't focus in a particular industry and we don't focus in a particular technology. So we do go across all the technology areas such as media, banking, fintech, insurance, and most importantly, because it's very German-driven in engineering and energy and utilities with the underlying technologies such as blockchain, AI, mobility, and security. So it is very multifaceted. I'd like to kind of explain how the ecosystem looks like in a bit of a diagram. It runs in pillars. It's like a petri dish that moves around depending on what's hot at the moment and what's not at the moment. But like I said, the investors are in the house. So we've got the largest investment company and VCs who are in the house. They have easy accessibility to the startups. They're renting inside the location. That's very important. So they don't come in and pot back out. We have our corporate partners. They're the ones who work collaboratively with the startups in order to work on their prototype to understand, can I break through the market? Can I create a new business model in there? We've got our startups, which is the heart, and the community itself. The community is made up of mentors and obviously also service partners. There are so many service partners, such as people who do design thinking workshops, people who do hackathons. They all come together in the location. And ultimately the tenants, and this is where a lot of the flexibility in the co-working space happens, through the new energy, the new ideas, that's also where you get that interactivity into the location. What I'd like to do is do a quick snapshot where we are. Like I mentioned before, WeXelerate had its grand opening in November last year, and we're nearly a year old in November this year. And we've already had 2 batches that we have run through. And these batches each had about 50 odd startups. And here is a snapshot of all the startups that were physically in Vienna in the location. I'd like to maybe pick 1 or 2 of these companies, for example, Lobster. The Lobster is the marketplace for social media content. There is a problem that they've identified, that there is a gap between 2 billion creators on social media platforms. And these creatives are looking for authentic photography and video content. But for some of the customers, like the agencies and other creatives, they can't discover the licensed visual content. And that's pretty diverse and hard to do, even though it's totally abundant on social media. So what did Lobster do? And this is how they applied for the accelerator program. They said they have an AI-powered platform where they can search and instantly license these content from real users from Instagram. And here we managed to get them connected with one of our established corporates or companies in order to work for 4 months risk-free on prototyping this. This is for those people that work in the old industry and that come from an entrepreneurial background. 4 months is not very long. In the old industry, things can take weeks and months for decisions to make. And this is actually what also ultimately kills a lot of the startups, because they're quite often bootstrapped. But because WeXelerate doesn't take any equity, it is in our interest to make sure those 4 months are incredibly fruitful by fostering these relationships with the corporates, fostering the investors, fostering also the ancillary services from various consulting companies or one-man shows in order to propagate that risk-free 4 months period. Here, all parties can establish whether this is a worthwhile business decision to move on with. Here is a quick snapshot, and this is also the reason why I'm actually here, and I'm very excited to be invited by the Thai to participate in this program. Of course, what makes us work is if we get a diverse set of startups who apply for our batch program. For the batch 2, which has just recently finished, we were able to reach out to 21 countries, or vice versa. These startups applied to us. And the way we actually end up one of those batches is usually that we have an investor day. And as I said before, the investors are in the house. You can walk in and out of their doors and you establish personal relationship, and that's worth a lot more than usual. And here, 32 startup pitched in front of more than 90 investors who not only came from Austria, but other regions, especially in the Central and Eastern region. The format we've decided on was a half-day pitching sessions in parallel groups, and then in the afternoon there was a fair so that everybody had a fair opportunity to see each other's pitching sessions. And here we obviously had a lot of positive corporations. We have at the moment 9 projects that are going on between the startups, so 9 from 50 you may say is not a lot, but they're closed off projects, so successful corporations between a startup and a corporate. We've got memorandums of understandings, and these are the decisions that these companies are taking together with the startup, and this is what WeXelerate facilitates for them on their behalf. How does an application work? We're going to start in 1st of October our batch 3 application. You can see we had more than 1,120 applications. Considering we're not even a year old, that's a lot. And we are in Europe, and Europe is a hotspot for a lot of innovation hubs. We've got one in Berlin, one in Paris, we've got London, we've got one in Vienna now. There are loads more little ones running around. And over 1,000 applications is quite a lot. And what we do here is we actually screen the market, we look at the traction, we look at the team and the technology. And out of that bucket, we identified 700 odd startups that can make the next level. And here we look at the maturity of the startups, the search criteria, which suits the corporates, and then finally to create a corporate match. So I'd like to underline here, we're not a pure matchmaking company. We really accompany the corporates on the innovation strategy that they have and make sure that we create that ecosystem for them to work successfully. Because what we have learned in the past is if you throw those two just together, it's bound usually for failure. And when we incorporate our corporates quite early on in the selection phase, they feel much more invested into the whole process as well. Here a snapshot in October, how many of these startups come from which region, and we've seen that it's actually reached out even into other areas, and I'm hoping that maybe by batch 4 we will have a whole bunch that also come from Thailand, and so please propagate the message as well. And I'm pretty sure some of the technology that I've seen here with some of the discussions I've had here, I'm very excited to see some of the applications come through. What are some of the key facts and stats that we have on these startups? So overall, we have 1.4 million funding on these startups, which is a large increase from the last batch, which means that batch 3, or that's starting now in October, we did a lot more manual scouting because our foremost interest is obviously ensuring that the use case and the problems that these corporates have are being solved by a particular technology that the startup can bring. And of course, many times the corporates ask for startups that would rather classify as a scale-up, since they are much easier to deal with and internally because of the structure and the mindset. However, WeXelerate will continue to keep encouraging our corporates to try to collaborate with more earlier stage startups. They do always require a lot more resources, a lot more attention and effort in the collaboration to kick off. However, this is actually where the big bucks lie. And the countries, as I said, is very important because by creating that diversity, you can also impact some of the new business models that come through. I want to focus on a couple of success stories and why WeXelerate is so successful in Central and Eastern Europe, and I will focus on 2 or 3 little areas. The first one is when you participate as part of the multi-corporate accelerator as a startup. Here, the core of the startup and the innovation hub is, like I said before, the 4-month accelerator program, and that means the startups are scouted according to certain use case areas and scouting criteria that are in close collaboration with our corporate partners. This actually means the pull from the startup is really keen because they say, I know my product is going to land somewhere and I can learn something and not just get some courses to fine-tune my pitch or whatever. And this leads to the successful cooperation between the startup and the corporates. And this is mediated by us through a very detailed program. And one example of that is Giromatch, an österreichische Kontrollbank. The Austrian Control Bank is a subsidiary of the Austrian National Bank, and Giromatch is a Frankfurt-based fintech that digitizes loan services and automates the loan granting process and connects the bankers and the retailers with other subject matter experts. Of course, that's a technology that the Austrian Control Bank hadn't thought about, and they were able to experiment with each other for this 4-month accelerator program on a no-risk basis. As I said before, we don't take equity, and that actually flourishes the startup to grow and to decide in which direction they want to go. And quite often it's also that the startup might say, actually, this was not the right corporate, we don't seem to match and whatever, and then we move on and see if we can match them with somebody else. And this was a very successful match, of course, and this is one of the corporations that keep on going on. A second successful startup, because of a consequence of being part of the program points of the accelerator, is that we bring together a service company or an ancillary service with our startups as well. Quite often a story such as the Austrian chatbot framework startup Labs AI and the executive officer of the company called Bearing Point met at a training session that Bearing Point had presented, and they got into a very loose conversation and chat, and what happens out of that training sessions, they were exposed to each other through the special services in the accelerator, and now the startup lab isn't just cooperating with them, but they've created a new technology around their very unique program that Bearing Point provides to huge multi-companies. And that's another great success story that we have here. And maybe a third startup success story as a consequence of having meetings and tenants in the hub is the following. Spar, which is one of the largest super chain markets in Austria and the German-speaking region, only wanted to come into WeXelerate to have a couple of innovation workshops. We at WeXelerate, we thought, well, why don't we showcase some of our startups where there might be a potential cause for collaboration. And Jingle is a chatbot, a personal shopping assistant on the platform. Now, Europe isn't quite up there yet that you do a lot of online shopping, especially with groceries. They did a short pitch, and it wasn't just a pitch, it was really a nice workshop to explain to them how they could perhaps use that model in their customer base. And voila, the same thing happened. Through that, an immediate connectivity happened. Now, things like that usually take months, but through that program, through that very focused, working together relationship that we know through our corporates who we understand incredibly well, plus the startups who we really maintain close relationships, these working relationships are possible, and out of that the cash flows and the deal flows happen. Of course, I would like to invite you all to meet us at lovely Vienna if you do happen to pop in to come to the music events or classical concerts. My details are attached here with the program itself. And I look forward to hopefully seeing a lot of you again, and for sure having a lot of Thai startups apply for our accelerator program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gabrielle Costigan.